Imagine a city so old that even the wind seems afraid to say its name. Now imagine that inside its graves, someone found traces of a human eye remade by hand. Was this only a settlement, or the remains of an experiment in civilization? Beyond the ruins, another secret runs underground without a sound. Water travels for miles beneath the desert, moved by calculation, not by machines. Then the hidden river becomes a machine, carved in stone and powered by gravity. If this was built by hand, what part of ancient engineering did we forget? High on a mountain wall, a king left words where almost no one could touch them. Those marks helped unlock dead languages, but their position still feels like a warning. Farther west, an empire turned ceremony into stone and made memory impossible to erase. These faces do not speak, yet they still organize the silence around them. The kings were not buried beneath the earth. They were lifted into the mountain. At the end of the route, water, fire, kingship, and fear meet in one silent lake. Nearby, a volcanic mouth was remembered as a prison for something no one wanted released. 6 places form one pattern: a burned city, hidden water, a stone machine, a mountain text, royal tombs, and a sacred lake. They look separate on a map, but together they resemble a sealed archive. The question is not how old they are, but why they fit together.
And today, we will open 6 doors of Iran's forgotten archive.
Our journey begins in the southeast, at the edge of an old trade world. Shahr-i Sokhta means the burned city, but the name explains almost nothing. The city is dead, yet its plan still speaks with disturbing order. These walls were not random shelters. They formed a structured urban body. Archaeologists found districts, workshops, houses, and a vast cemetery. The graveyard is so large it feels like a second city beneath the first. Inside the graves, everyday objects survived longer than the voices of their owners. One discovery made a site almost impossible to forget: an ancient artificial eye. Was it medicine, beauty, status, or a sign of knowledge we underestimated? Some remains suggest people here understood the body in ways we rarely imagine for their age. This was not a village struggling to survive. It was a place of production. The hands that made these objects were trained, patient, and exact. The more you look from above, the less accidental the city becomes. Fire passed through this place more than once, leaving a record in the ground. But destruction did not erase the pattern. It preserved the question. Shahr-i Sokhta stood on roots that connected worlds before maps named them. Objects found here point to exchange, measurement, and social memory. Even the pottery seems less decorative than coded. The site feels less like a ruin and more like a laboratory of early civilization. Each room asks the same question: who organized life here so early? Trade cannot exist without trust, and trust often begins with measurement. A single drilled bead can reveal more discipline than a collapsed palace. Wind covers the evidence every day, and every day the ground gives a little back. No one from this city left a voice we can hear directly, so the objects speak for them, but only in fragments. The fire was an ending, but also a seal. The city had a spine, branches, and specialized spaces, like a living organism. From here, routes could move toward India, Central Asia, and the Iranian plateau. Calling this a simple settlement feels like closing the archive too early. It may have been a place where society tested itself, and that eye, real or symbolic, still seems to look back. The first door closes on a burned city that was anything but primitive. But if the first secret was the city, the next secret is what kept cities alive. In Iran, Survival was sometimes hidden under your feet. To understand the archive, we must go down. The Qanat is a river that refuses to appear on the surface. From above, the system looks like punctuation marks across the desert. Above ground there is thirst. Below ground there is movement. The slope had to be precise enough for water to move, but gentle enough not to destroy the tunnel. Every meter was measured with eyes, hands, and memory. One mistake in angle could stop the water or collapse the system. That is why the wells appear one after another, like breathing holes for the earth. Each circle is an entrance into a calculation older than machines. There is no engine here, no pump, no loud command, only gravity obeyed perfectly. These systems had to be maintained like living arteries. Where the Qanat reached the surface, life could gather. A hidden stream could turn a dead margin into a garden. The moment the Qanat appears, the desert changes personality. This was not only engineering, it was a contract with survival. In the silence, the scale becomes harder to believe. The walls still remember the rhythm of the workers. Light enters only in circles, like brief messages from the surface. Modern travelers may pass over the system without knowing it is there. The design begins where underground water can be persuaded to move. Mountains store the water, but the Qanat teaches it where to go. On the surface, heat rules. Underground, another law is working. The sound is small, but in a desert, it can mean an entire future. The builders understood geology without needing our vocabulary for it. Imagine lowering yourself into this darkness with only a rope and trust. The tunnel breathes cooler than the world above. Some Qanats ran for kilometers, turning distance into obedience. That is the unsettling part. Nothing appears to push it. Who controlled water could decide where a community could exist. Water here was not just a resource. It was power made invisible. At night, the holes look less like wells and more like a message. The second door reveals a civilization that hid rivers inside the earth. But in another city, water was not hidden. It was forced to perform. The invisible river now becomes a public machine. Welcome to Shushtar, where water was carved into work. The third door begins with the sound of controlled force. Shushtar does not feel like one monument. It feels like a machine exposed to daylight. Here, water was divided, accelerated, trapped, and redirected. The city did not simply receive water. It made water work. The falling water looks natural until the masonry gives away the design. Stone became the bones of a hydraulic body. Every channel had a purpose, and every drop had a root. Bridges, dams, and mills were tied into one operating system. From above, it resembles a blueprint carved into the city itself. The sound of grinding once mixed with the sound of falling water. Mist softens the view, but the engineering remains severe. The force here is violent, but never uncontrolled. Walk beside the channels and the city sounds alive behind the stone. Below, separate routes become one restless basin. Even a small notch could decide pressure, speed, and survival. The system was repaired, expanded, and remembered by those who used it. The city grew around the machine, not away from it. Like the Qanat, part of the truth runs underfoot. Some traditions connect Shushtar to captured engineers and imperial ambition. But no single story is enough for a system this layered. Reflections make the machine look older than its stones. These openings once transformed current into useful motion. Force became labor, and labor became a city rhythm. Inside, you do not watch the system. You feel it vibrating. It is a diagram you can walk through. Human scale nearly disappears beside the ambition of the design. Someone had to enter, repair, clean, and trust the structure every day. The more you listen, the more the lost skill becomes audible. If this was made with simple tools, what exactly have we forgotten? The third door closes on water turning to power. Now the route moves from water to writing. In the next archive, the message is not buried. It is raised beyond reach. The fourth door begins where the human neck must bend upward. For centuries, travelers pass below a sentence written for time. The machine of water ends. The machine of language begins. Bisotun waits like a locked page on the mountain. On this cliff, Darius wrote power into stone. Its height is part of the mystery, not a minor detail. The image is political, but the placement feels almost ritual. The words became one of the keys to unlocking cuneiform. 3 languages stood together, as if the mountain itself was translating empire. Below, travelers moved while above, the king's version of history did not move at all. Every wedge is small, but together they forced dead voices open. This was more than a record. It was a declaration placed beyond ordinary hands. The relief does not merely tell a story. It arranges obedience. A page of stone can outlive the paper of nations. Even when shadow covers it, the text feels present. To approach it is to understand why it was not meant for casual reading. When scholars compared the scripts, languages that had gone silent began to answer. Sometimes a mountain inscription becomes a dictionary for the dead. Power does not always hide. Sometimes it rises where no one can touch it. Natural cracks age randomly. Human cuts insist on meaning. Who was the audience for a text placed so high? Perhaps it was not made for the crowd below, but for future rulers and history itself. A small cut can hold an empire longer than an army can. At night, the cliff becomes a sealed wall again. The fourth door reveals language turned into altitude. From the mountain of words, the path moves to a city built as ceremony. The next archive is not a single inscription, but an entire stage of empire. At Persepolis, stone no longer whispers. It organizes the world. The fifth door opens on a ceremonial city. Here, people from many lands still walk in a procession that never ends. The animals are stone, but the authority they guard still feels alive. This was not built like an ordinary city of daily noise. It was built to make order visible, and not far away, the kings continued their message inside the cliff. City and tomb, ceremony and death are parts of the same archive. The empire watched its own image with terrifying patience. The fifth door is ready to unfold one carved figure at a time. If Bisotun is the king's sentence, Persepolis is the empire's theater. To enter it, you do not simply walk, you ascend into a designed memory. Persepolis begins with a gate that suggests the world itself had to pass through it. The guardians have lost their sharpness, but not their authority. Every carved visitor arrives forever, holding gifts for a ruler long gone. The details are calm, but the message is enormous. Persepolis turned empire into visible order. Even broken, the columns still arrange the emptiness around them. This was a stage for power, not a city of ordinary living. A lion and a bull locked together, as if the seasons themselves were carved into stone. Hands carry gifts, but also obedience. The steps are low and wide, made less for climbing than for procession. Remove the crowd, and the place still feels staged. The stone remembers titles, names, and the architecture of command. Fire touched this place too, but it did not erase its grammar. At night, the terrace becomes less a ruin and more a constellation of power. Dawn reads the reliefs slowly, like a hand passing over a text. It was not built to house ordinary life. It was built to project a world. But the story of power does not end at the terrace. The royal dead were placed above the plain like unanswered questions. These are not graves hidden underground. They are doors suspended in stone. The cliff gathers kings into one vertical archive. The darkness inside makes the facade feel even more deliberate. Later, rulers carved themselves below the older kings, adding new layers to the wall. Even centuries later, power returned to the same cliff to be remembered. From below, the tombs feel less like endings than watchtowers of memory. Beside the tombs stands another locked form, simple and impossible to ignore. Its purpose is debated, but its presence sharpens the entire landscape. Together they form a pair: ceremony for the living, elevation for the dead. Here, death was not allowed to disappear into the ground. The fifth door reveals power converted into stone memory. Now the journey leaves kings and enters something older than politics. The final door waits where water, fire, and legend meet. The air changes here. The archive becomes sacred. At the center, a lake remains still enough to feel guarded. This place was tied to fire rituals, royal legitimacy, and spiritual authority. And beside it stands a dark mouth wrapped in legend. The route that began in a burned city ends beside water that does not move. Takht-e Soleyman is not only an archaeological site, it feels like a threshold. At its center lies a lake, so still it seems to hide depth rather than reflect sky. Water is the first symbol here, but not the only one. Fire once gave this place its ritual force. Kingship, religion, and landscape were joined into one plan. The wind does not make the place empty. It makes it listening. A lake this quiet makes every question sound louder. Depth here is not just physical. It is symbolic. The century binds natural forces into a controlled sacred image. In the Sasanian world, ritual and authority did not stand apart. From above, the lake feels like an eye set into the earth. To walk around it is to move through a circle of memory. But the lake is only half the final door. Nearby, the earth opens into a mouth older than the stories around it. Legends remembered this place as a prison, not a viewpoint. The darkness below feels less like depth than warning. Some places do not need movement to create fear. Water in the center, a hollow mountain nearby. The arrangement feels intentional. Here, water, fire, stone, and myth do not separate cleanly. Steps suggest movement, ceremony, and repeated return. If Shahr-i Sokhta was life, and Shushtar was a machine, this is where meaning becomes ritual. The sixth door reveals a sanctuary where nature was turned into sacred architecture. 6 places now form one pattern: city, water, machine, text, power, ritual. The frightening part is not that these remains are old, it is that they are precise. If this is only what survived above ground, how many chapters remain unopened below? Iran is not just a land of monuments. It is a layered archive of human intelligence. A civilization that hid water under deserts could also hide truth in plain sight. And perhaps that is why the first eye still feels like it is watching the last lake. Which door unsettled you most? The city, the water, the machine, the text, the tombs, or the lake? Because every open door in Iran seems to reveal another sealed one behind it. The archive is still there, under dust, water, stone, and silence. The past did not disappear. It changed forms. Our route ends, but the questions keep traveling. Write in the comments which of these 6 places shocked you the most. Like the video if this journey pulled you deeper into the mystery. And subscribe, because the next sealed archive may be even older.